date. Now, former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe has filed papers with the Labour Court to challenge the decision to rescind his reappointment. This comes after the power utility announced that the decision to appoint him to his previous position as the CEO has been overturned. Molefe left Eskom after being implicated on the previous public protector's state capture report. Meanwhile, last week, Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba said that a decision by Eskom's board to reinstate Molefe as its chief executive officer had caused government and the parastatal a lot of harm and reputational damage. This morning, we take this discussion further, and we joined in our studios in Johannesburg by Khulani Qoma. He is Eskom Board Spokesperson. Good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us on Morning Live.
Thank you, Palisa.
Now, just please give us an update. What is the latest with Eskom and Brian Molefe? We know that the matter is before the court now.
Yes, yesterday, as you possibly picked up, there was the court actually had to look at what the EFF as well as the DA had actually brought on board. So that matter was then postponed. So there is no further date that has been specified in terms of that, because Molefe has actually challenged the lawfulness or the fairness of his dismissal at Eskom. So what is happening then is that in the meantime, then the lawyers are talking amongst themselves to actually find a date or a timetable that would be suitable for all, so that then papers could be filed by various parties. There is a meeting tomorrow in that respect.
Yeah, we know, of course, the issue is sub judice, but the board, does it feel that everything was done lawfully to reappoint him back to his position?
Well, I think now making pronouncements on that may actually be quite precipitate, given the fact that the matter is now before the courts. So I think we all have a benefit now, of hearing what the court has to say.
But Khulani, just for the record, since there have been conflicting statements on his departure, we heard of unpaid leave, he had applied for early retirement, and he resigned, of course, for the interest of good governance. Talk to us about what is contained in the files of Eskom in terms of Brian Molefe leaving.
Well, the board actually, I think, does actually admit the fact that the leave aspect could have been done better. So that is why then they decided to actually rescind the initial decision to grant him early retirement. So I think that part is taken care of, in the papers. But in terms of his own reinstatement, the board believes that is actually was well within order. But now everything is up in the air now, given the fact that the court is actually intervening in this particular respect.
All right, let's just go back a little bit to the issue of unpaid leave. Was he on unpaid leave?
Well, in terms of his reinstatement, relative to the fact that he had actually asked for early retirement.
Yeah.
Then the period when he was not within the employ of the organization, when he thought he had moved on, because he had been granted early retirement. So that period then, from a legal perspective, I understand, is then treated as unpaid leave. Yes.
All right. So, but when he left, he made it clear that he was actually leaving in the interest of good governance. That's what he said when he left.
I understand. So yes.
So these are conflicting interests. Do you accept that as the board?
What would be conflicting between?
I mean, the fact that we're hearing of unpaid leave, and the next thing we're hearing of resigning because of good governance, and then he goes to take up a job at Parliament as an ANC MP, which is a job as well.
Well, I've just explained why actually the issue of unpaid leave actually comes about. So imagine if he had actually applied for early retirement while he was, in fact, if early retirement had been, as an application, had been denied while he was still within the employ of the organization. Because when you apply for early retirement, you have not resigned. So the only difference is that when the decision to deny him occurred, it was retrospective. He had already moved on with his life. He would not have actually anticipated that at some point he was going to be reinstated. So therefore, he had to proceed. That's why he became a parliamentarian. That's why then the issue of unpaid leave comes in, because there was a period, there's a period that needed to be accounted for in respect of the period when he left and when he was actually reinstated.
All right. And now the board's decision to rescind, in fact, to reappoint him back to his position, was it maybe perhaps based on the fact that the 30 million rand had caused an uproar?
Well, you remember, if you actually trace, where this thing actually originated, the board granted Molefe, early retirement. Yeah. He proceeded with his life. And the board actually sought to move. That's why it actually, started the process of getting a new CEO. So then there was that story that broke. And then the minister asked the board to then relook the matter because she was not comfortable with the amount that was being bandied about. Yeah. So that's why actually we are where we are right now. Yes.
All right. So the board saw the necessity to bring him back instead of paying him that large amount of money. Is that what happened? Well,
as the board actually proceeded to look at reviewing the matter, it then discovered that the issue of early retirement was not done, as perfectly as it would have. And then they decided to actually then rescind the initial decision then to grant him the same. Hence, then, he had to come back. And now we're where we are.
And the figure of 30 million rand, Khulani, how was it arrived at? A lot of people were talking against it, that he's been with Eskom for only 18 months. So how do you arrive at an amount of 30 million rand?
I wouldn't be able to actually explain that to you because
was it not a decision of the board maybe?
No, the board actually, it's not within the competence of the board to do that. They actually, I think approved the principle. Then the quantum was actually calculated by, it will be actuaries and other specialists that are responsible for such matters.
But the board was fine with it? They didn't see anything
wrong with it? Well, the board, I think, actually did not know that immediately, that it was an amount that was being bandied about.
So what's the current situation now on the position of the CEO? Who is performing the duties of the CEO?
We have, the board has actually advanced 2 names as requested by the minister. Then the minister will have to actually give us what the name is between the 2 names.
So Eskom is still studying the papers, but you said it earlier on that you wouldn't want to divulge further into the issue. But obviously, as the board, when you see it, do you see that Molefe has a case or not?
Well, I don't know. The lawyers will actually tell us. They are meeting this afternoon, but they are consulting as well ongoingly. So I wouldn't be able to tell. Possibly he will be in a better position to say whether he feels he has a strong case or not.
The other issue that's been on the news is that of Tigeta. Talk to us about what Eskom has done with the recommendations by the PricewaterhouseCoopers report. Has there been any action taken?
Well, on the PricewaterhouseCoopers report, that report was actually engineered by Eskom itself in terms of its own continuous improvement. Yeah. So the majority of I think we have about 3 or 4 recommendations that actually are still in the process of being implemented. Otherwise, most of them have been. Yes.
But in terms of Tigeta, what the report says about Tigeta? That the contract was entered into not in a valid way, if I can put it that way?
Well, we've been through that quite a bit, but that was actually, an effort by PwC itself, and we've actually corrected and jacked up our procurement systems in respect of that.
All right, but you do agree that the supply chain processes were flouted?
Well, I think we agree that the processes could have been better. But we have actually corrected that.
The value of the contract, there are conflicts in report in terms of the numbers. Is it 7 billion rands or 10 billion rands?
Well, I don't know if I have the figures, but I don't want to actually make a mistake and actually
because we're hearing 2 different numbers. Some people are saying 7 million, but the PricewaterhouseCoopers report, what does it say? Does it talk about 7 billion or 10?
No, I think it talks about 7.
All right.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about one other issue, Khulani. The issue that Eskom is actually looking into hiking tariffs. Is it true that you're looking at hiking it with about 10%? 19.9%, which amounts to 20%?
Well, I had a conversation with colleagues yesterday to seek to understand really where we are, because I saw already stories in the media, and my understanding is that, our ESCO team is still actually looking at that. So I think things are still up in the air, so it will be difficult to really comment in any detailed way. So I don't know, how far through, in fact, the numbers that we are citing right now, because internally I understand this matter is still within discussion.
All right.
Yes.
But now, with all that is happening at Eskom, with the winter season, of course, at its full force, are we likely to see any load shedding this winter?
My understanding is that we're not actually projecting it. No. But obviously, there will always be risk around what can cause load shedding. But I think, from what I gather, we're not actually looking at, we're not projecting it in any near future.
And last week, Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba said, this decision and the whole Brian Molefe issue has actually caused government and the parastatal itself too much harm as well as reputational damage. Are you worried as Eskom's board that things are not looking good for Eskom as it is now, in terms of reputational damage?
Yes, definitely. I think there will be no denying the fact that the matter has really had enormous impact on the reputation and the standing socially of the entity itself. So yes, and I think that is why the board has actually been moving as fast as it did to seek to actually clarify and actually get the issues that are in contention dealt with. So I think what is happening now in terms of the court process may actually work in our favor in terms of getting these issues actually clarified once and for all.
All right, there are so many issues to touch on, but we've run out of time. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Khulani Qoma is Eskom Board Spokesperson, talking to us about the events that have unfolded the past few weeks at Eskom here in South Africa, and giving us the update on the Brian Molefe court case.